I caught my stepmother kissing another man in our kitchen while my father was 3 states away on a business trip. But the real horror didn't start when I hit record on my phone. It started when I realized who she had really been hiding from my father all these years. My name is Ava. I'm 24. And if you had asked anyone in our town to describe Linda, they would have called her perfect. She was the kind of woman who never raised her voice in public, always brought the right casserole to the right funeral, and somehow managed to look graceful even taking trash bags out to the curb. After my mom died, my dad fell apart in slow, quiet ways. He still went to work, still paid the bills, still smiled when people looked at him, but the light in him was gone. Then Linda showed up with soft hands, a careful smile, and a talent for making broken men feel needed. Within a year, she was his wife. Everyone said she saved him. I thought she studied him. There was always something about her that made my skin tighten. Maybe it was how she kept track of everything in the house, like she was building an empire instead of a family. Maybe it was how she corrected people with that sweet little laugh that somehow made them apologize to her. Or maybe it was the way her eyes always sharpened when money came up, even for half a second, before she smoothed her face again and played the loving wife. My father never saw any of it. To him, Linda was warmth after grief, stability after loss, a second chance he thought life had generously handed him after taking too much. To me, she was a woman who liked control a little too much and wore kindness like expensive perfume. At first, it was just small things. She started taking calls in the laundry room with the door half shut. I'd walk by and hear her voice drop into this strange, secret softness I never heard when my dad was around. Then there were the gifts. A bracelet too expensive to be from a girlfriend. Flowers delivered with no card. A silk scarf still folded in boutique paper that she hid the second I walked into the room. And every time my father mentioned updating his will, Linda's whole body changed. Not obviously. She was smarter than that. But her shoulders would go stiff. Oh, her smile would freeze for 1 second too long. One night, I heard her in the pantry whispering on the phone. "He's close," she said. I stopped in the hallway. Then she laughed quietly and added, "He'll sign everything soon, and then we can stop hiding." I remember standing there barefoot, one hand on the wall, feeling cold spread through me so fast it made me dizzy. Stop hiding what? I should have told my dad right then. Maybe a better daughter would have. But I knew him. If I came to him with a feeling instead of proof, he'd defend her before I finished the sentence. Linda had spent years building that kind of trust. So I stayed quiet. And I watched. 2 days later, my father left for a 4-day business trip to Chicago. He kissed Linda goodbye in the driveway like a man who had no idea he was leaving his whole life undefended. That same afternoon, I came home early from work because my shift got cut short. And there, parked beside Linda's SUV, was a black Mercedes I had never seen before. I didn't slam the door. I didn't call out. I stepped inside as quietly as I could, already feeling my pulse in my throat. Then I heard voices. A man's voice. Linda's laugh, and when I reached the kitchen doorway, I saw her, wrapped in another man's arms, kissing him like my father had never existed. My hand moved before my brain did. I pulled out my phone and pressed record. But 5 seconds later, the man said something that made my blood turn to ice. "Once he transfers the house," he murmured, "we'll finally tell your son the truth." Her son. Linda never had a son. At least, that's what she wanted us to believe. I stood there in the hallway with my phone shaking in my hand, staring at Linda like I'd never seen her before. Her son. The words kept repeating in my head so loudly I barely heard the rest of their conversation. The man, tall, expensive watch, the kind of confidence that comes from believing consequences are for other people, leaned against our kitchen counter like he belonged there. Linda poured him wine using the crystal glasses my father saved for holidays. Like betrayal deserved good glassware. "You promised," he said quietly. "Ethan is tired of waiting." Ethan. A name. A real person. Linda sighed like she was the victim in all of this. I know, but Robert is careful. He trusts me, but I can't rush the will too much, or Ava will start asking questions. My name in her mouth made my stomach turn. The man smirked. Your stepdaughter already doesn't like you. Linda gave a cold little smile. She never mattered. Robert does. I had spent years thinking she disliked me because I reminded her of my mother. Turns out I was just inconvenient. I kept recording. Every second felt like holding a lit match too close to gasoline. Then Linda said the sentence that changed everything. Once the house is transferred and the business shares are secure, Ethan gets what should have been his from the beginning. The beginning. Not a recent affair. Not some secret boyfriend. This had roots. Deep ones. I backed away slowly before they could hear me, heart pounding so hard I thought it would betray me first. I got to my car, locked the doors, and just sat there gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in the world. My father thought he had married love. He had married a long-term investment plan. And somehow I was the only person who knew. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the video over and over, each replay making me sicker. At 2:14 a.m., I opened my laptop and typed Linda's full maiden name into every search bar I could think of. Nothing useful. At 3:07 a.m., I found an old Facebook account buried under years of tagged photos and outdated privacy settings. And there he was, Ethan Collins, 26 years old. Brown hair, same sharp jawline as the man in my kitchen. Graduation photos, birthday posts, a few comments from Linda under an older account using her maiden name. Proud of you always, Mom. Mom. I stared at that comment for a full minute. She had lied for years. Not just to my father, to everyone. No children, no past complications, no old baggage. She had sold herself as the perfect second chance. Clean, easy, safe. But she had a grown son hidden just far enough away to keep the illusion alive. And if Linda was planning to hand my father's business to Ethan, this wasn't just cheating, it was theft. I started digging harder. Old county records, archived photos, public filings. By noon the next day, I had enough to make my hands go numb. Linda had quietly transferred money for years. Small amounts. Smart amounts. Never enough to trigger suspicion. College tuition payments, apartment deposits, monthly consulting transfers to a business account under Ethan's name. Paid for, directly or indirectly, by my father. And then I found the worst part. 3 months ago, Dad had already started changing the will. I knew because our family attorney's office had mailed a confirmation letter to the house by mistake, and Linda had intercepted it before he could open it. I remembered her holding that envelope. I remembered her smiling too much that night. God, she had almost won. I should have called my father immediately, but anger without strategy is just noise. And Linda was too careful for noise. So I did something she never expected. I smiled. I had dinner with her that night like nothing happened. I asked about her yoga class, complimented her earrings, watched her lie to my face while passing the potatoes. And all the while, I was building the file that would destroy her. Video of the affair, screenshots of financial transfers, proof of Ethan, property records. Copies of suspicious signatures I was starting to believe weren't signed by my father at all. I even called Daniel Mercer, our family attorney, without telling anyone. He had known me since I was 12 and still called me kid. When I showed him the first part of the evidence, he took off his glasses and just stared. Your father has no idea? I shook my head. Not yet. Daniel leaned back slowly. If this is real, and Ava, I think it is, we need to move carefully. Very carefully. I'm not interested in careful, I said. For the first time in days, my voice sounded like mine. I'm interested in timing. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Well, he said quietly, lucky for you, your father is planning the perfect occasion. I frowned. What occasion? Daniel folded his hands. Next Friday. Family dinner. Your father wants to announce what he's calling a new chapter. My stomach dropped. Of course, the official will update the celebration before the betrayal. Linda thought she was about to be crowned. She had no idea I was bringing the execution. And as I drove home that night, one thought kept repeating in my head. She taught me patience. Now she was about to learn what I could do with it. The week before the dinner felt like living inside a storm no one else could see. Linda floated through the house like she had already won. She hummed while making coffee. She ordered new curtains for the dining room. She even started talking about our future with my father in that soft, practiced voice she used when she wanted something expensive. And my father, God, my father, looked happy. That was the hardest part. Watching him trust her. Watching him smile at a woman who had been slowly measuring his life for resale. Every time he kissed her forehead, I wanted to scream. But revenge isn't built on screaming. It's built on silence, on timing, on letting people walk confidently to the edge before they realize there's no floor. So I stayed calm. I worked with Daniel almost every day. We met in his office after hours, surrounded by old leather books and framed degrees, while I laid out every ugly piece of Linda's perfect life. The affair video, the inheritance conversation, the hidden financial transfers, the fake consulting invoices connected to Ethan, the forged signatures, and finally the proof that Ethan wasn't just some secret son she forgot to mention. He was her plan. Daniel rubbed his temples after reviewing everything. She's been building this for years. I nodded. She didn't marry my father, she targeted him. He looked at me carefully. You understand what happens after this, right? Divorce, legal war. Your father will be devastated. I stared at the stack of evidence between us. He's already devastated. He just doesn't know it yet. Daniel sighed. Then he said the words I had been waiting for. We're ready. Friday came dressed like a celebration. Linda wore cream silk and diamonds. The woman really did love symbolism. She looked like innocence wrapped in expensive fabric. My father had invited just a few people. Me, Linda, Daniel, officially there to discuss estate planning, and two close family friends who had known my mother before she died. Linda probably thought public witnesses would make the moment feel more legitimate. She had no idea they were there for the collapse. Dinner started beautifully. Of course it did. Linda made rosemary chicken. My father opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for years, and everyone played their assigned roles. She laughed at the right moments, touched his arm gently, asked me about work like she cared. I answered politely, smiled, passed the bread. And under the table, my fingers stayed wrapped around my phone like a loaded weapon. Halfway through dessert, my father stood. He lifted his wine glass, smiling the way people do when they think life is finally settling into something safe. I just wanted to say something tonight, he began. Linda looked at him with that perfect expression. Surprised, touched, innocent. I almost admired the performance. After everything life has thrown at us, he said, I've realized how grateful I am for second chances, for loyalty, for the people who stay. He looked at Linda. She actually lowered her eyes like she was embarrassed by praise. I wanted to throw up. I've decided, he continued, that it's time to make things official. A new chapter. A real future. There it was. The moment she had been waiting for. I saw it happen in real time. The tiny, victorious smile she tried to hide. She thought she had it. The house, the accounts, the business, the inheritance. She thought tonight was her coronation. My father raised his glass. To Linda, thank you for your devotion. And that was when I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Everyone turned. Linda blinked. Ava, my father said. My voice was steady. Before we toast to devotion, I think we should all watch something first. Linda's face changed, just slightly. But I saw it. Fear. Real fear. She recovered fast. Ava, honey, this really isn't... It really is. I walked to the television mounted on the wall. connected my phone. My father frowned. Ava, what is this? I looked at him, and for 1 second, I hated that I was about to be the person who broke his heart. Then I remembered Linda in another man's arms. I remembered your son. I remembered years of lies, and I pressed play. The room filled with Linda's voice, her laugh, that kitchen, her kissing another man while my father was in Chicago, believing he had a faithful wife waiting at home. Silence. No one moved. No one breathed. My father stared at the screen like his brain was refusing to translate what his eyes were seeing. Linda stood up so fast her chair nearly fell. This is not what it looks like. I hit play on the second video, her voice again, clear, cold. Once he transfers the house and the business shares are secure, Ethan gets what should have been his from the beginning. This time, no one needed explanation. My father slowly sat down, like his legs had stopped belonging to him. Linda's face had gone white. Ava, stop this right now, she snapped. No sweetness, no softness, just the real Linda. Finally. I turned toward her. No, I said quietly. I'm just getting started. And then Daniel opened the folder and placed the documents on the table. Proof of Ethan. Proof of the money. Proof of the lies. And Linda realized, too late, that this dinner had never been hers. It was mine. Linda looked around the table like a woman trapped in a burning house, desperately searching for one unlocked door. There wasn't one. Daniel sat calmly beside my father, flipping through the documents with the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from knowing the truth is already enough. The room felt too still. Even the clock on the kitchen wall sounded louder. Tick, tick, tick. Linda straightened her back and did what people like her always do when charm fails. She attacked. This is insane, she snapped, pointing at me. She's been obsessed with ruining me since the day I married Robert. She never accepted me. She's manipulating everything because she's jealous. Jealous? I almost laughed. Of what? Her talent for fraud? My father still hadn't spoken. He just sat there staring at the papers like they were written in another language. Daniel slid one page closer to him. Robert, he said gently. These are bank transfers from your personal joint account to Ethan Collins over the last 4 years. Linda cut in fast. He was helping me with private investments. Daniel didn't even look at her. Total amount, $218,000. Silence. Then he placed down another document. And these are the signatures authorizing property discussions on the lake house transfer. My father looked down. I watched the exact second recognition hit. That's not my signature, he said. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Linda's entire body stiffened. She tried again. Robert, listen to me. No. Just one word. But I had never heard my father sound like that before. Not angry. Worse. Done. He looked at her the way people look at the wreckage after a fire, trying to understand how something familiar became unrecognizable. You forged my name? Linda's eyes filled instantly with tears. Weaponized tears. Classic Linda. I was protecting us, she whispered. I did everything for us. For our future. You were taking too long and I knew what was best for this family. For this family? I said. I stood there shaking now, years of swallowed anger finally cracking open. You mean for you, for Ethan, for the life you were building behind his back while he trusted you with everything. She turned to me with pure hatred. You think you've won? You spoiled, suspicious little girl? You never understood what it takes to build security. Your father needed me? I stepped closer. No. He loved you. That's different. That landed. I saw it. For 1 second, even Linda had nothing to say. My father stood slowly. His wine glass was still half full on the table, untouched. He looked older than he had an hour earlier. Older and somehow clearer. Did you ever love me? Linda opened her mouth, closed it, and that was answer enough. One of our family friends quietly excused herself, tears in her eyes. No one stopped her. This wasn't dinner anymore, it was an autopsy. Finally, my father nodded once. Small. Final. Get out. Linda blinked. Robert, get out. His voice cracked through the room like thunder. She looked at Daniel, at me, at the table, at the entire life she thought she had already secured. And for the first time since I'd known her, Linda looked afraid. Real fear. Not performance, not strategy. Fear. You can't do this tonight, she said. Where am I supposed to go? Dad gave a hollow laugh. That stopped being my problem the day you decided to sell my life to strangers. Then he looked at Daniel. Cancel the new will. First thing tomorrow. Daniel nodded. It's already in motion. And file for divorce. Linda inhaled sharply. Robert, please, no. Again. Final. He turned to me then, and the pain in his face almost broke me. How long did you know? I swallowed. Long enough? He nodded slowly. Not angry, just hurt. And somehow that was worse. Linda stood frozen for another moment before reality finally reached her. She was losing. Not maybe. Not eventually. Now. She stormed upstairs. We could hear drawers opening, closet doors slamming, footsteps like gunshots across the floorboards. No one moved. 15 minutes later, she came downstairs dragging 2 suitcases and wearing the same cream silk dress she had chosen for her victory dinner. Only now it looked ridiculous, like a costume after the play had ended. She stopped at the front door and turned to me. This was the real goodbye. No witnesses left to impress. No sweet mask. Just venom. This isn't over, she said quietly. I believed her. That was the problem. I believed her completely. I stepped forward anyway. It is for this house. She smiled then, a terrible thin smile. You sound just like your mother. That should have hurt. Instead, it felt like armor. Good, I said. She left. The front door closed. And just like that, the woman who had spent years inserting herself into our family was gone. But the silence she left behind was heavier than her presence ever was. My father sat back down at the table, not speaking, just staring at the empty chair where she had been. I sat beside him. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then quietly he whispered, I was going to give her everything. I reached for his hand, but you didn't. He looked at me, eyes red, voice barely there. No, he said, because you saved me. And for the first time since my mother died, my father cried. The house felt different after Linda left. Not quieter, heavier. Like the walls themselves were trying to process what had happened. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway. Her coffee mug was still in the dishwasher. Her coat was still hanging by the front door because in all her dramatic exit, she had forgotten it. For 3 days, my father barely spoke. He moved through the house like a man learning how to exist inside ruins. I stayed. I canceled work meetings. I made coffee he forgot to drink. I sat with him in silence because sometimes grief doesn't want advice. It just wants a witness. On the second morning, he walked into the kitchen holding an old photo of my mother. He stared at it for a long time. Then he said, I think part of me knew. I looked up. He sat across from me, older than I had ever seen him. Not the details. Not this. But something. I just didn't want to admit I had been fooled. I nodded. People don't ignore red flags because they're stupid. They ignore them because they want love to be real. He smiled sadly. You sound older than 24. I felt older than 24 the moment Linda moved in. That made him laugh. A small one. But real. It was the first hopeful sound in days. Daniel handled everything fast. The new will was canceled. Linda's access to every joint account was frozen. The divorce filing went through before she could start rewriting the story for sympathy. And Ethan, her carefully hidden son, her grand inheritance prince, lost every imaginary kingdom he thought was already his. No house, no shares, no business, no easy future funded by my father's trust. Turns out ambition looks a lot less elegant when the money disappears. A week later, Linda called. Of course she did. Not my father. Me. I stared at her name on my phone for a full 10 seconds before answering. Her voice was calm. Too calm. I'd like to meet. I almost hung up. Instead, I said, why? A pause, then, because you should hear my side. I laughed. Actually laughed. Your side? Linda, I watched your side kiss another man in our kitchen. Her voice sharpened. You think you're proud of what you did? You humiliated me. I stood by the window, looking out at the front yard she used to decorate for holidays, like she was auditioning for sainthood. No, I said. I revealed you. That's different. She went cold. You ruined my life. I answered without hesitation. No, you built it that way. I just turned on the lights. Silence. Then she said the thing I'll probably remember forever. You sound just like your mother. She was always better at being loved than I was. And suddenly, underneath all the manipulation, all the greed, all the performance, there it was. Jealousy. Years of it. Maybe she hadn't just wanted my father's money. Maybe she had wanted my mother's place, her life, her certainty, her love. But wanting someone else's life doesn't make it yours. It just makes the fall uglier. I took a breath. Goodbye, Linda. And this time, I ended it. Not her. Me. 2 weeks later, my father stood in the living room holding a box of Linda's leftover things. Scarves, jewelry boxes, old birthday cards, fragments of a life that had turned out to be mostly theater. He looked at me and asked, Trash? I looked at the box, then nodded. Trash. He smiled. And for the first time, it felt like we were finally choosing honesty over comfort, healing over pretending. That night, we sat on the back porch where my mom used to drink tea in summer. The sky was soft blue, almost peaceful. Dad looked at me and said something I didn't know I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. You didn't just save me, Ava. His voice broke. You saved this family. I looked down because suddenly my eyes burned. For years, I thought protecting people meant being quiet, keeping peace, avoiding conflict. But sometimes love looks like confrontation. Sometimes loyalty means being the person willing to destroy the lie. And sometimes the best revenge isn't screaming. It isn't cruelty. It isn't even punishment. Sometimes the best revenge is perfect timing. Truth delivered at exactly the right moment. Linda left this house with 2 suitcases and the face of someone who had finally lost. And I stayed. Not because I won, but because some things are worth fighting for before they disappear. Family, truth, home. But here's the part I didn't know then. The story wasn't actually over. Because exactly 2 weeks after Linda left, someone knocked on our front door at 11:47 p.m. And when I opened it, Linda was standing there, smiling. And behind her was a police officer. That was the moment I realized she had come back for one final revenge. And this time, she was coming for me.